Ren. Welcome to my book corner. Today we're taking a look at something that is a graphic novel that began life as a Tapas webcomic with over 1.5 million views, and that is Project Nought by Chelsea Furedi. As always, we will talk about the story, the characters, the world building, and the presentation, as well as me giving my final thoughts at the end. Let's just jump straight into this one. So as mentioned, the main character for this is Ren, and Ren is from New Zealand in 1996, going through kind of the normal, everyday things that a young man going through school/college would do. Struggling a little bit with grades, struggling a bit with social anxiety. You do get a sense of somebody who just feels like what they're doing isn't good enough. And they try to run away to try and find some support because they're not really getting it from their parents who don't understand. Going through a bit of a period as well for him personally in terms of discovering his sexual identity. And when he wakes up, as you can see here, in the far future, he has a bit of a panic, as you would expect. Over the course of the story, he does develop some feelings for Mars, and that develops in a really good organic way. He also has some real issues dealing with the fact that all these people that are pulled from the past are kind of celebrities in many regards. They are fascinated by the population at large. There's a real media circus that sort of goes around it as well. Now, Mars, as arguably the secondary character, is in some ways quite naive. They are very much a very techie sort of person. They worship everything that Chronotech builds and does. They dream of working for the company. And you've got a very sort of rose-tinted view of the world. Chronotech can do no wrong. And that gets kind of thrown off during the book, but in particular you have Phoebe Bennett. Now, Phoebe used to be Mars's best friend until something happened in a previous time involving their sort of past travelling partner, and they're determined to prove that Chronotech is not quite the organisation that everyone believes it to be, and they're, as you can see here, they're sort of trying to sneak in and discover the truth and the secrets of what's going on. They're your three main characters. There are a number of other main characters in here. You know, not everybody's a corporate stooge. You have the person who sees this sort of group of young people as, you know, looking at things and breaking the rules, but for good reasons, and helping them out. And then you have the typical sort of corporate, not quite evil overlords. You don't get a clear view of what their aims are, although it is suggested that whilst the aims may be benign, it's very much a case of ends justify the means. But the character work and the interaction, especially between Ren, Mars, and Phoebe, is really strong and does help drive this forward. So this is Ren's story. Ren is this gentleman right here, and Ren is a young man going through his school life and really struggling. He struggles a little bit with both his parents' perceptions of him, who see him as wasting his time doing things like video gaming and stuff like that. And basically he overhears a message on an answering machine saying that he's going to be sent away for a period of time to help him focus on his studies. On his trip to meet for the first time a pen pal that he's been writing to for a number of years, something weird happens and he wakes up in the year of 2122, and this is explained as a kind of a cultural exchange, for want of a better word, where basically people are brought from certain points in the past so that they can explain what it was really like living in those times to students of the modern day of 2122. All these people who are brought from the past are paired up with one person in particular, and they sort of do projects together and assignments and all that sort of stuff. And the one that Ren is paired with is this gentleman here, who is called Mars. And Mars is a massive shill, for want of a better term, for the company that does this, and that company is called Chronotech. Now, the interesting things that are going on here is that on completion of this period of study, Ren will get sent back to his own time and have his memory erased and will remember nothing. This gets more complicated as Ren begins to form feelings for Mars, which initially he pushes away because what's the point if I'm not going to remember? But on top of that, we begin to get asked questions about Chronotech and is everything really what it appears? This is a pretty solid story. There is a twist to it, which I'm not going to mention here as it does spoil one of the key points of the book. But overall, it's a decent framing device for the story, even if there is some red herring in there. And it does enable the story to move at a decent pace. Onto the world building then. Obviously, a lot of the world building for this actually goes on through the actual artwork in the story. But you do get a sense of the old and new in a lot of the art. As you can see just on the front cover, you have the massive tower, futuristic looking background. But what makes the world building really interesting here is kind of the amount that the world is integrated and how a lot of things that we see as of now in 2024 have stuck around. Things like your podcasts and your fascination with celebrity that is still very much in vogue now holds on at this point. Things like video games as well. You have the virtual reality booths for the nights out, which have replaced arcades in a lot of regards. And again, that is something that we're beginning to see moving towards now to an increasing extent as well. Past that, you have the basic dialogue that does cover a lot of the stuff, covering things like the fact that, for example, certain items of clothing are worth a fortune now because of the retro effect, which is something that we again see in modern day. Especially at the moment, there's a very much an 80s nostalgia vibe going on due to various TV shows and the cyclical nature of fashion in general. And you do get the sense that whilst the world has technologically moved on, in a great scheme of things, a lot of things haven't changed. People are still people. And that actually helps ground this in many regards to stop, because an issue I sometimes have with sci-fi is that I become a little bit disassociated with what's on the page, and this does a good job by keeping so many things consistent with now that it doesn't lose me. But as I already mentioned, a lot of the world building is coming through in the artwork, so let's get straight on to the presentation. As previously mentioned, this started life as a webcomic, and as a result, it is largely digitally drawn, I should say, not written. And I think it's a good looking webcomic. You have a lot of the sort of the angular nature to the faces that you sometimes get, and some of the facial expressions occasionally feel a little bit off, as you sometimes get with digital artwork. Overall, I think it's really well done. What I do really appreciate, though, is the various different colour schemes that vary throughout the book that really set the mood for the panels and what's going on. You've got the warmth of the home life and the oranges and the yellows at the beginning for the 90s. And then that contrasts immediately when he wakes up in the future and the cold, clinical sort of blues and greys. It really does a good job of giving you an idea of what sort of mood you're expected to feel when reading through parts of the book. And you have that continue further on where you have the interactions and you have the warm colour scheme for your good interactions versus the more negative areas of the book or the points of high tension. Where you have the cold, the clinical greys, and it shows the lack of humanity at certain points, especially in terms of Chronotech and some of the things that they are doing, and it does an exceptional job of getting the tone across. Also does a good job of showing how little things have really changed. A lot is the same. So, for example, you still have advertising posters for things like bands, but they're completely digital now. And again, this is something that we do now see coming through now with the digital billboards replacing the old-fashioned poster-style billboards. And it does a really good job. You also have some good contrast here as well. So in various different scenes where you have the clinical backdrop, but it's the people that really pop on the page because of their bright colour schemes. Mars in particular is a good example of this throughout due to their different hair colour compared to everyone else. They pop off the page so easily. And I think this is a really well drawn graphic novel slash comic. On top of that, it's not overly busy. You sometimes have an issue with stuff like this where you have too much on the page. Pet Detective Agency, the manga I read recently, was a good example of this. But even where you do have a lot of text, it doesn't feel overwhelming, which I really appreciate. So I actually think this is a really, really well presented graphic novel. It's a bit of a chonker, really thick, and again, even just looking at the side, you can see the switches in tone just by looking at the side pages as well. So yeah, I think the presentation is probably actually in many regards the strongest point on this. So my thoughts overall then, I actually really enjoyed this. I thought this is a very solid YA aimed time travel graphic novel. It's got some lovable characters who you do root for. The story has a decent twist in it, which I didn't see coming, but actually in hindsight makes complete sense. And it's very economical with what it does. It does a good job of capturing the tone of the story it's trying to tell. So overall, I think this is a good read if you're somebody who wants a nice, easy, quick graphic novel with a bit of a time travel element involved with some enjoyable and lovable characters. I gave this a 3.75 stars out of 4, rounded up to 4 on Goodreads. What I'd like to know is, have you read this or anything similar? What did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. I'll catch you all soon.